Welcome to The Stone Wolves, a Galactic Football League novella. Written by Scott Sigler and J.C. Hutchins. Performed by Scott Sigler. The Stone Wolves is also available as a Kindle ebook from Amazon.com or as a full-length audiobook from Audible.com. To find links for those items, go to scottsigler.com/thestonewolves, one word. Hello, junkies. Happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Festivus for the rest of us. And to all you Pastafarians out there, happy holidays to you too. A Real Girl herself and I wish you a delightful holiday season. And remember, it's the holidays. Be nice to everyone, starting with yourself. It's the holiday season. I'll say it again. Be nice to yourself and be as nice as you can be to those people, those Grinches in your life who are not going to be nice during the holidays. Do the best you can. After the episode, I have a promo for the podcast Cinematica and Amalia, an awesome podcast where real scientists dive into the science of movie monsters. I was on that show recently. I had a blast. We did a deep dive into the monsters of the 2006 James Gunn horror comedy, Slither. Awesome, super fun. Nathan Fillion, Elizabeth Banks movies, tons of great people in it. Stick around after the episode to hear that promo. I think you might like that show. And hey, I just passed 81% done with GFL Book 7 Second Draft. I've got the ending all blocked out, you guys. It's all downhill from here. Maybe 30,000 words to go. We'll see when I can get that done. And that is it for my jibber jab. Let's get you caught up on the story, and then we're all going to go find a glowing meteor that just landed and put our faces right up next to it. Previously on The Stone Wolves. RedWire is imprisoned in the Borehole, a secret Creterakian facility where they interrogate political prisoners. Cillian, Beans, Aya, Zan, and Fanaka are now in range of that prison. It's time to plan RedWire's escape and spring him free. Chapter 12. Bat Country. The crew huddled around the rumpus room's coffee table. On it, a scattering of objects. A rumpled black t-shirt formed into a little fabric pile with an upturned bottle cap on top, a salt shaker, and 6 hex nuts. So that's the plan, Fanaka said. If I can really do what she says, it'll work. Aya fought down an urge to say something sarcastic. She was mostly sure she could pull it off, but not 100% sure. The Oleron had punched out at Big Rock without incident. The IFF codes from the cube had, apparently, worked. The ship moved through Creterakian space as an Imperial freighter. Whether that false ID would have lasted for long or not didn't matter. In the quiescence, once the Oleron had moved past the range of optical detection, it was basically invisible. So far, so good. But just because the first part of the operation had gone well didn't mean the next part was a guaranteed success. Especially when Aya wasn't sure what the next step would be. Cillian leaned over the table, studied the hastily assembled war map diorama. He'd pulled his recliner up close so he didn't have to stand. Leading from his butt. So inspiring. But hey, he wasn't drinking at the moment, so Aya counted it as a win. The black t-shirt represented the Borehole. The Borehole was an asteroid that had been mined out for iron and later converted into the galaxy's most secret prison. The hex nuts represented the 6 fighters the Borehole supposedly had on station. The salt shaker was the Oleron. Aya was on the couch. Beans was in her lap. He'd crawled right up. Aya hadn't known what to say, so she hadn't said anything. It surprised her that Beans was so warm. The physical contact, even from an alien species, it was nice. Schmeckzan stood at the table's edge, head tilted down, green-stuffed frog face seeming to stare at the diorama. Cillian leaned back, looked at Fanaka. "No," he said. Fanaka frowned. "No to which part?" "The killing parts." "You've got to be kidding me," Fanaka said. You think we can just waltz in there and knock on the front door? Aya says she can make us invisible to the Borehole's remote sensor suite, but that advantage won't last long. The closer we get, the more likely a patrol fighter will see us. We need to come in fast, hit them hard before they know what's going on. Cillian shook his head. You agreed to do this my way. Oh, don't get started with that non-violent crap, killer, Fanaka said. This isn't a philosophy class. This isn't a game. No, Cillian said. The single syllable as hard as a rifle report. There are sentients there who did nothing to us. We're going to keep everyone alive, if at all possible. Fanaka looked at Cillian like he'd just spoken a nonsensical string of Sklorno curses. Keep everyone alive, she said. She gestured to the diorama. And how the hell do you think we're going to do that? There is no way to get RedWire out without violence. So, what's your great plan, Mr. Pacifist? Cillian sank back in his chair, an old man about to take a long nap. It's not my plan, he said. He gestured to Aya and Beans, to Zan. Crew, what have you got? Fanaka crossed her arms and scowled. She was a strong sentient, a real badass, but clearly she wasn't used to being told no. Her plan was great, if you didn't mind killing a few dozen relatively innocent prison staffers. Aya didn't know what to think. Was Skipper serious? Did he really want input on how to rescue Goldman without killing anyone? Aya hoped that was the case.
Aya,
Zan said.
Are you sure you can pull off that invisibility trick?
Aya's heart fluttered. Zan, again putting her on the spot. Yeah, Aya said. The plush frog looked up from the table. Its googly eyes seemed to scrutinize her.
Absolutely sure?
Zan asked.
Unequivocally sure?
Aya held her breath, felt the familiar self-doubt flood in. But there was no reason for that doubt. In the Fafnir project, she'd not only trained on a Nemric, she'd hacked one during an actual op. She knew the details of those systems she wasn't even sure the creators knew. Yes, she could do what she promised. Unequivocally, she said. Fanaka sighed. So shucking what? The fighters are still flying random patrols. We can't take a chance that one of those will see us coming in. You can hack the Nemric, but you can't hack a pilot's brain. Beans twitched.
Starling, can you sing?
Aya bristled at the nickname, but not as much as before. Maybe she was getting used to hearing it from Beans's mouth. I can carry a tune, she said. Why? The Sklorno slid out of Aya's lap. He lay down on the floor, reached under the tattered couch, came up with something in his hand. A crinkly blue food wrapper. He placed it on the table.
Or you could throw that in the garbage,
Zan said.
Where your trash is supposed to go.
The four eye stalks moved independently, looking at Fanaka, Cillian, Aya, Zan.
Throw it out in the trash?
He set the wrapper on the table, opposite the salt shaker, the t-shirt between them.
Zan, the tin can, that's no way to treat a celebrity.
Fanaka was right about one thing. Murdering everyone in sight probably would have worked. But that wasn't how Cillian did things anymore. The killer had retired. At least, that's what the killer hoped. We will reach the outer signal range of the borehole in 8 minutes, Cillian said. Are there any questions about the plan? They'd gathered around his command chair. Aya seemed nervous, which meant she was the only one of the group who had any common sense. Fanaka looked annoyed. Zan's frog face showed no emotion. Beans' four eyes stared off in different directions. Cillian wasn't even sure if the Sklorno was paying attention at all. Fanaka raised her hand. I have a question, Captain. Oh, she was in bitch mode. Excellent. Go ahead, Cillian said. Fanaka raised an eyebrow. Is there something in those beers you keep pounding that makes you think this idiotic plan is actually going to work? Stow it, Hopscotch, Cillian said. We're committed. Zan, you have that false ship signal ready to go?
Affirmative, Skipper,
Schmeck Zan said. Zan always delivered. Always. Excellent, Cillian said. Beans, you're on cannons, just in case we need them. But try your very best to not need them.
No, non-lethal whenever possible. Affirmative.
And keep at least 2 of your eyes on our power levels, Cillian said. We're 2 days from the punch spot at Big Rock, so if we have to run, we need as much continued acceleration as we can get. Aya, you're good? To Cillian, the tattooed, purple-skinned beauty didn't look like an experienced SIGINT operative. She looked like a kid, trying hard to hide the terror of a pending battle. He had a soft spot for that look. He'd had it once, long ago. He'd lost it. He hoped Aya never would. The girl nodded. Then we are ready to go, Cillian said. 6 minutes, to your stations. Beans, Aya, and Zan obeyed. Fanaka stayed. And what are you doing in this ridiculous plan again? I'm flying, Cillian said. And what am I doing? Staying out of the way until we land. Fanaka leaned closer, whispered. Your plan is idiotic. I know you've got tower missile batteries. Fire those missiles into the landing shaft before the borehole knows we're here. Destroy their ships before they can launch. We know sentients are going to die today. Don't make those sentients be us. My crew has a plan, Cillian said, loud enough for his crew to hear it. 5 minutes until we send the signal. Take a seat, Fanaka. She shook her head, walked to the acceleration chair. Peaches clicked along behind her. Cillian closed his eyes, breathed slowly. He calmed himself, ran through the plan in his head. The scheme was ridiculous. There was no other word for it. But unless he wanted to come in cannons a-blazing, he needed to trust his crew's abilities and give this a shot. If the scheme didn't work, Cillian knew he would have to be realistic and do what had to be done. He owed it to RedWire. Beans bounced in place on his tiny custom-built chair, humming something that sounded like an off-key rendition of Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries. 2 of his eyes swayed in time with his humming, the other 2 remained firmly focused on his station's holotanks.
1 minute,
Zan said. Aya's hand slid across the key control skins Beans had made for her. Was she really as good as she claimed? Cillian and the others would find out soon enough. Aya's familiarity with the borehole system was a massive break. Sometimes, most times actually, a little bit of luck marked the difference between surviving an op and winding up as a chunk of splattered meat. A massive break. Cillian opened his eyes. Luck was a thing, but so were odds. What were the odds of his new comms operator just happening to have deep familiarity with a type of control system the borehole used? That seemed
10 seconds,
Zan said. Cillian came back to the moment. He flicked his fingers out 3 times, then took the hologrips.
We are in signal range of the borehole,
Zan said.
Aya, proceed.
Launching tight beam signal, Aya said. If all goes well, their techs will see a random flicker of that incoming signal, then nothing more from us. And if things did not go well, if she couldn't do what she said she could do, the Oleron would be facing as many as 6 Imperial fighter craft. Cillian stared out the floor-to-ceiling windshield. So much blackness. Instruments told him where the borehole was, but, of course, he could not see the asteroid from this far out, not with the naked eye. The quiescence dulled all signals, even light. A sound inordinately loud in the now silent bridge. Aya, Cillian said. What are you waiting for? Oh, hold your tentacle, old-timer, the girl snapped. Cillian turned in his chair to look at her. Had his comms just told the ship commander to hold his tentacle? Aya Omiata might fit in here after all. She looked up from her station. Success, I think. We should be skins and viz to the borehole sensors.
Should be,
Zan said, her tone sharp.
I assume your rambling lexicon was referring to us being invisible. Can they detect us or not?
The purple girl licked her lips, shrugged. I guess we'll find out soon enough. Cillian waited. Nothing happened. Confirmed, Aya said. I have shadow control of the borehole system. There is no response to our presence, no alarms, no reaction chatter. Quiet as a fart in space out there. Cillian waited some more, wondering if the other shoe would drop. Fanaka broke the silence. Outstanding work, Aya, she said. I knew you could do it. Fanaka knew. Cillian glanced at his former comrade, his former lover. That look on her face, cold, self-satisfied. Was he missing something? No, of course she looked satisfied. She'd put a big operation together to get the info on the borehole, then to find Cillian, then to bring the Oleron to the asteroid. An impossible mission by most standards, and yet here they were. So far, so good. But they had many light years to go before they could sleep. Aya, Cillian said, what's your level of control? Can you access internal systems as well? Aya instantly shook her head. Hapana Nana. It looks like their system has a bifold configuration. In effect, their Nemric is two separate computers, one that manages all external sensors and communication, and one that apparently manages all internal functions. To access those, I need a direct connection to an internal node. From here, all I can influence are external signals. Not the best news Cillian could have hoped for, but if Aya's skills could get them in unseen, that was a huge benefit. We'll figure it out once we're inside, he said. Zan, is your false signature ready to go?
Yes, Skipper.
Aya's abilities to influence sensors were untested, but Zan's false signature skills were anything but. When it came to making Ship X look like Ship Y, Zan was a genius. There was no other word for her abilities in that category. Patrol craft, Cillian said. Any indication they're out there? That was the primary threat at the moment. Aya had control of the borehole sensors, but she could not influence what fighter pilots saw with their own eyes. I am picking up zero chatter, Aya said.
No optical movements or energy signatures,
Zan said. Well, how about that? Aya had pulled it off. That won't last, Cillian said. Even complacent and lazy guards patrol sooner or later. Let's get this show on the road. The first part of the plan had worked. Would the second?
Fun, Bean said. Aya Papaya, are you ready to sing?
Aya closed her eyes, took in a deep breath, held it for a long moment, and then began making and sounds with her mouth. After that, she began to speak. Putu kutu, budu gudu, wee-wah, wee-wah, wee-wah. Fanaka sneered in disgust. Killer, I can't believe you're letting them do this. What the hell happened to you? I grew up, he said. Considering what was to come next, he realized how idiotic his comments sounded. Aya made a few trilling sounds now, rolling an R for a good 10 seconds, and then said, in rapid succession, A well-worn warrior warded the wizard. Around the rugged rocks, the ragged rascals ran. Apex to the slaypex. How many berries would a spider bear bury if a spider bear could bury berries? Aya, warming up her rather delightful singing voice. Fanaka looked at the girl as if she'd lost her mind. The swan swam over the pond, Aya said. Swim, swan, swim. The swan swam back again. Well swum, swan. She opened her eyes and nodded. Ready. Light it up, Zan. Zan Schmeckhands danced across her station's controls.
Mirage program loaded,
she said.
Also, I would like to point out that human music leaves much to be desired. A preposterous claim,
Bean said.
Trench warfare is the greatest cultural accomplishment of any sentient race. Zan, if it's too loud, you're too old.
Jokes. Teasing. The Oleran was about to dive into a life-and-death situation, and the crew was making fun of things, keeping it light. It reminded Cillian of his days with the Null Knives, or on the Keeling, or in the Stone Wolves. Sentients face danger in different ways. Some, this crew in particular, did so with humor. The words of an ancient Greek philosopher came to mind. He didn't remember the name, but he remembered the quote. "They're gonna nail us no matter what we do, so we might as well have a good time."
Activating,
Zan said.
Zetadeath Mirage is active.
In the main holotank, a new icon appeared. The yacht Zetadeath, the tour bus of the famed band Trench Warfare. Beans hooted.
The biggest band in the history of ever.
He strummed an air guitar with his raspers and began to sing.
Shatter mine, glass heart smash, release me from this prison! Gods and monsters, hear my scream, answer my entreaty to reason!
Fanaka crossed her arms and shook her head. If stairs were lasers, she could have sliced the entire crew in half. Killer, back in the day, we knew every hack, every trick, she said. I've never heard of anyone, anywhere, being able to do anything like this. That was because Fanaka had never heard of Zan. Zan's genius was on another level. She had created an entire world. Granted, that world had eventually blown up and Zan had been blamed for it, but that didn't alter what she'd accomplished. Cillian had thousands of lives on his conscience. Zan had more than 1 billion. And only she could perform this kind of sensor warping wizardry. It required legit superintelligence to understand and execute the math, to say nothing of making sense of the menagerie of modified sensor and comms tech, all homebrewed and installed by Beans. "I'm getting chatter," Aya said. "The Borehole system sees the yacht. The prison staff is starting to react." The holotank showed an interesting irony. The Zetadeath, which did not exist, appeared in the tank, while the Oleran, which did exist, did not. The only accurate thing in the display was the asteroid, which was growing larger and would soon be visible through the windshield. "Aya, you're up," Cillian said. "Let's see if this works." Aya did a final vocal warm-up, pink lorry, yellow lorry, pink lorry, yellow lorry, and then activated the ship's inner space transmitter. The Oleran was now broadcasting into the ether. "Mayday! Mayday!" Aya said, in her best impression of one of the galaxy's most famous people. "Oh, this is Somalia Midori, aboard the inestimable class yacht Zetadeath. Something is wrong with our punch thingy that makes the ship go zoom, and all my crew ate some tainted shoeshlicks, and they're all in the bathroom, and they can't help, and mayday, mayday." Cillian grunted a chuckle. Beans covered his mouth with his raspers in his hands. Fanaka seemed awed by the craziness unfolding before her. A static crackle on the bridge's speakerphone.
Zetadeath, this is the Imperial Stealth Cruiser Crosswind.
A human voice.
You are in restricted Creterakian Empire territory.
Cillian made a cut-it-off gesture to Aya. She pressed a button, muting the transmitter. He turned to face Zan. "A stealth cruiser? Is that for real?" Zan's face tracked readouts at her station.
"No,"
she said.
"The signal is coming from the borehole. There are no ships nearby."
That made sense. The Bats didn't want anyone to know the borehole was there at all. Having the staff pretend the facility was a stealth cruiser could let them deal with trespassers, yet not show all their cards. Subterfuge all around, it seemed. Aya turned off the mute button. "Oh, Lord, help me! We're out of control, and my mohawk is getting messed up, and we're all gonna die!" She turned it on again, started laughing. "I think you're overdoing it a bit," Cillian said. Beans stood up on his chair.
She is a natural skipper. Higher emotion is more confusing for the responders.
He stretched a tentacle toward her.
Come on, Aya. Give me more.
The crackling voice over the speakerphone, now a little clearer.
Zetadeth, you will turn off all engines and transmit boarding codes immediately.
Aya unmuted, threw her head back, raised her hands to the ceiling. Don't you see? I can't control anything. My makeup is a mess. I don't know what an engine control even looks like. Please help us. We don't want to die. We are so very rich, and this sucks, and my crew is sick on expired shoeshlicks we bought at a Gans Prime truck stop. Aya muted the transmitter.
Borehole is launching fighters,
Zan said. Cillian still couldn't quite make out the borehole visually, but there was no mistaking the 7 tiny lights that flickered away from the spot.
Isaacs,
Zan said.
2 Meteora class, 3 Coriolis class, and 1 Guppy class. And the Carcelero, which I assume they intend to use for docking and boarding.
Fanaka nodded. 6 fighters. I told you my source was good. Meteora class, I said. For real? Those are some old-ass ships. That they were. Meteoras were made before the takeover. Cillian had flown one once, long ago. The Bats have been in absolute control for 45 years, Fanaka said. Aside from the Guild's activities, they haven't faced a significant military threat other than the Prowat. Why not have a handful of rust buckets guarding the prison? It's not like anyone's going to attack it. No one even knows where it is. Static screeched from the speakerphone.
Zetadeth, we are inbound. You are illegally in Imperial space. Please decelerate and prepare to be boarded.
Aya unmuted. Oh no, I think I just broke a nail, and we're going faster now, and wait, what's that alarm thingy? It says punch drive overload? We're going to die! I see the darkness of eternity, and oh my God, it's full of stars! She again clicked the mute button. In the holotank, the Zetadeth shot away, faded, winked out. The fighters chased after the imaginary ship. In seconds, their visible lights dimmed, then, one by one, they winked out as the quiescent's inexplicable interference blocked out all wavelengths.
The known facility vessels are now out of visual range,
Zan said. Cillian nodded. And we haven't been spotted?
No response to our approach,
Zan said.
Aya's hack seems to be holding. Our plan appears to have worked.
Fanaka crossed her arms. This is absurd. Cillian couldn't argue with that. Overwhelming an opponent's tactical info is a solid strategy, Cillian said, as he eased back into his command chair. We gave them too much data to process. Misdirection is the primary weapon of a smuggler. Make sentience look the wrong way while you move past. Had using a famous ship and a famous sentient helped the ruse? Probably, but there was no way to be sure. All Cillian knew was that it gave the Borehole staff more to think about. Whether they'd believed or not didn't matter. Their entire defensive complement had chased after the ghost, leaving a window for the Oloran to slip in unseen. Hopefully unseen, that was. Through the bridge window, Cillian could now clearly see the asteroid. Its merciless, scarred surface seemed to promise a terrible death to anyone with the unbridled gall to invade its sanctum. Yitzhak Goldman, RedWire, was somewhere inside. Cillian and his crew weren't out of the woods yet, not even close, but yes, the plan had worked. So far, 0 deaths. Would that luck hold? Fanaka, he said. Work with Aya to reach your contact on the inside. Zan, put the landing location up on the tank. Let's move to step 3. The Oloran wasn't invisible to all of the borehole's sensors. Thanks to Aya's abilities, though, it might as well have been, as the signals received from those sensors were hijacked and modified before they reached the staff or any automated alarm systems. Cillian still couldn't believe their luck. What were the odds that Aya was a maestro at hacking the very computer system that the Borehole used? It seemed a bizarre coincidence. There was something hinky about it, though Cillian felt too far out of his depth to even begin to suss out what it was. He'd been away from this kind of game for far too long. Ultimately, it didn't matter. They'd made it into the Borehole without killing anyone, and if Cillian continued to have his way, it'd stay like that until the op was over. Under that technological blanket of darkness, Cillian set the ship down where the inside contact had told them to set down, at a backup docking shaft on the big asteroid's underside. Underside was a relative term, of course, as there was no up or down reference point until one was inside and in the presence of artificial gravity. The docking shaft was typical of the facility's Quith design. The shaft provided access to the interior. Ships could dock at several berths built into the shaft's curved sides. Cillian wondered how long it had been since the shaft had been used. According to Fanaka's information, the prison used the larger, primary, topside shaft exclusively. The plan was simple, yet about to get even more dangerous. The inside contact would meet them in the smaller landing shaft's airlock. As far as Cillian knew, there could be a small army of bats waiting for him, Fanaka, and the crew. Rescuing RedWire was worth the risk. Cillian and the crew gathered in Hold 5. They checked their gear and prepared to exit the airlock and enter the facility. "Use non-lethals as your primary option," he said. "If things go bad, don't hesitate to use lethal options. We want to preserve lives, but not at the expense of our own." Aya shifted her grip on her tough luck gun, nodded. She looked kind of ridiculous holding the thing, which was almost as big as she was, but there was nothing ridiculous about how well the weapon worked. Beans' Schmeck didn't move at all. Cillian assumed the Sklorno was doing internal systems checks. Fanaka bounced on the balls of her feet. She'd always done that before combat, trying to keep her anxious energy under control. She was a far better planner than she was a soldier, but Cillian knew firsthand that she could hold her own in a fight. Would she follow his orders and try to avoid killing anyone? He would find out soon enough. Peaches, her little robot, was perched on an empty exosuit hanging from a rig on the bulkhead. The bot might have come in handy on the op, but then again, it was independent enough Cillian couldn't count on it to follow, or even understand for that matter, his orders. He didn't speak Key. Fortunately, Fanaka had seen the wisdom of leaving Peaches behind. It wasn't a combat unit, and she didn't want to lose something she'd spent so much time perfecting to her liking. Cillian adjusted his void cloak, double-checked the image generator cables. Everything felt right. With the cloak, he could blend almost invisibly with any shadow, any dark area. Only bright, direct light would reveal his presence to most sentients or sensors, and even then, he could usually fade into the background. "Let's go over it again," Cillian said. "We used the secondary landing shaft's airlock to enter the facility, with the access code provided by the contact. The area we're going in hasn't been used for years. We progressed through the tunnels to the rendezvous point, which is apparently storage for old mining mechs and equipment for doing any external work on the asteroid's surface. Once there, the contact will tell us the plan for extricating Goldman. Whether we get internal control or not," Fanaka said, "we go in, find Goldman, and get him out by any means necessary." Even through the constant Nasdor haze, Cillian felt a flash of anger. "Remember, Fanaka, no killing," he said. "If you think I'm not serious about that, you will find out you're wrong." Her eyes narrowed. Was she surprised that Cillian had just threatened her? Probably, because he was definitely surprised he had. "We get Goldman and come back out the same way we go in," she said. "Aya continues her external sensor hack, making us invisible. We get the hell out of here. When I have Goldman in my ship and we leave the quiescence, you all get your money. When you get paid, you open the Oleron's cargo hatch and I take off. I will be out of your lives forever." Was that the truth? Part of Cillian wanted exactly that, and part of him did not. Once he was back on the Oleron with RedWire and Hopscotch, what would that be like? 3/5 of the Stone Wolves back together again. Just like old times. Almost. "Let's get it done," he said. "Beans, open the hatch."
Hi, I'm Sam.
And I'm Adam.
Have you ever wondered how big King Kong's heart would be? How the creatures of the wizarding world would evolve in real life? Or how Simba's time on Pride Rock would actually have played out?
If so, then do we have the oddly specific podcast for you. Run by two ecologists, a writer, and a veterinarian, Cinematica Animalia is your weekly foray into the biology of movie monsters.
So join us and our co-hosts Libby and Dave every week as we explore everything from kaiju-filled ecosystems to gothic horror biology to mermaid sex.
At Cinematica Animalia, the monsters aren't real, but the science is.
You have been listening to The Stone Wolves, a GFL novella. Written by Scott Sigler and JC Hutchins, performed by Scott Sigler. Follow Scott on Twitter and at Instagram, where he is at Scott Sigler, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Scott Sigler. The Stone Wolves was directed by A. Sigler. Engineered by Steve Riekeberg. Copyright 2021 Empty Set Entertainment. Theme music is the song Battle Cry by the band Super Weapon.